Live streaming is on.
Hey,
Okay.
you did it.
Hey, maybe we'll see.
It said it was on.
It wouldn't lie to us.
Got to give me a heart attack.
It was loud.
That was
wasn't it?
fairly loud.
So, I'll wait just a couple more minutes since we seem to be rather lately attended.
Oops.
Are you a coffee drinker or a tea drinker this morning, Brent?
Coffee. I need to reset the tolerance again because it's starting to get out of control.
Oh, no. Well, remember, you're not as young as you used to be.
That is true.
What do you consider out of control?
Like I make my coffee very strong, and like I was having like two like big strong cups, which is a fair amount of coffee. It's kind of hard to calculate. Like one thing I've done is I've gone back to a somewhat smaller cup, and
You dropped down to the half-gallon size?
yeah, and then I'll try to get it down to like a cup a day for a while. It's really best when I can cut it out completely, but that can be very painful.
I alternate back and forth with coffee and tea. One day coffee, one day tea. And
that sounds good.
Help me out a little bit.
All right. Well, I guess we can get going. So welcome everyone. It's May, I guess. And this, as time keeps marching on. I don't think we had anyone planning to do anything particularly special today as far as a presentation. But if anyone has anything to present briefly, something, they want to show on the screen, that's cool. We should have the time today with the amount of folks we have on. So we'll see how it goes. But I guess let's start going around the room. Gene, what you got going on?
Well, I missed last month's meeting. I was up in Northern Virginia. I've got grandkids, and my daughter-in-law she works for the Geological Survey and had a thing she was doing out in Oregon. So I was super nanny for a week for the two.
How'd that go?
Not too good. There again, as I told Brent, I'm not as young as I used to be. But I'm had a great time. I did review the last meeting and caught up a little bit on stuff. But it was interesting. And what I've done in the past week or so is to install Ubuntu 22.04, the long-term release, the newest one, came out in April.
What was the version? 20?
It's 22.04. It follows the same as regular Ubuntu. Okay. So it's the same release, only with the X added to it, which is the XFCE version, which is kind of a stripped down version of Ubuntu without a lot of, you can put in anything you want from Ubuntu, which I usually, I'll add my standard things, an ebook reader and if I've got a CD thing, a CD burner, and a few other things like that. But out of the box, it's got enough features pretty much for me.
How big a download is it?
Well, let me see, Pete, if I can find that. That's a good question.
Well,
I want to say 2.7
gig,
2.4 maybe, but let me see if I've got it somewhere.
So my internet connection, when it's running good, is running about 5 megabits.
Uh-huh.
Am I going to survive a 2 gig download?
Oh yeah, it's not. It didn't take long at all to do it. I'm getting in the wrong spot here to do what I want to do. Hang on. Now let's see. Yeah, it's a 2.5 gigabytes image, and then of course I download it and then burn it over to a USB ISO, so I can install it on however many computers I want to install it on.
Okay.
Um, the only issue, and it's not a huge deal for me because I think I could go back and change some things and get it operating the way it was operating before. But in 20.04, the previous long-term release, you could dual boot with Windows.
Okay.
And this time, the Xubuntu install asked for a secure boot. And I did opt for secure boot this time. But if you do that, then I think you lose the option of dual booting. I don't know how that works, but and then of course you look on the wiki and they say, oh, you can go in and add this line to your Etsy grub file and get it to look at other OSs. But I'm not sure whether the Windows 10 that's on the machine was installed with EFI, and I don't think it was, so it doesn't pick it up. So anyway, I'm without Windows on this one machine, but I can do without Windows pretty much on all machines except for one or two little things. But that, and then I had one of the USBs that I was using. I had used disks in Xubuntu. It's I love the program. It's just a little disk utility, and I think it's if you in Synaptic Task Manager, it's GNOME disks or GNOME dash disks or something like that. But it gives you kind of an instant view of your attached drives. And you can do, it's got a lot of functionality too. You can format, you can check the status of the drive and the health of the drive and all that stuff. And I had formatted this USB to NTFS because is it FAT16 or FAT32, maybe both of them, have a limit in file size that you can, so if you want to put something big, huge on there, you can't do it. So I formatted it to NTFS and disks, but then when I tried to, when I unplugged it, plugged it back in, it wouldn't recognize the disk. And so I said, well, I'll go to gparted and that'll fix it. So I go to gparted and sorry, lost my power cord. Went to gparted and it said, oh, you got to do this. You got to go back into Windows and run a check disk with a /F and then reboot and reboot again. So
oh boy.
I go in there and the format in disks took about 30 seconds. It was lightning fast. The format in Windows took like a half an hour for like a 32 gig USB stick. And it just seemed like such a huge difference. I guess there again, I'm no expert on this, but I guess it's because Windows did a more complete format, a more thorough, I don't know if it did a right to zeros on it or what, but it sure took a long time, as opposed to the Linux formatting of the same disk, which was just like instantaneous. And I think the Linux thing I did select just overwrite, don't
quick format.
Quick format rather than a thorough. Yeah. So
That's
anyway,
it.
so I did what it said. I went back into Windows and I did check disk. And rather than rebooting it, I just reformatted the disk in Windows to NT, and it seemed to work fine. So, problem solved, but I don't know who created the problem, whether it was me or that. And if anybody else has had trouble dual booting with Windows and the newer Ubuntu's, let me know. And if you found a solution, I'd appreciate your knowledge. That's about it for me, I guess. If Steve Rensler shows up, he had asked a couple of meetings ago about why I run two browsers, Opera and Vivaldi. So if he's interested or anybody else is interested, I'll be glad to do a quick down and dirty on that, on just for my reasons, from my thinking, which is sometimes not as clear as other people's thinking is, but that's just the way I do things. So anyway, that's about it for me.
I got a quick question for you.
Sure.
I run Mint. I think I'm up to Mint 20.
Yeah.
If I go to Mint 22, is that going to be based on the Ubuntu 22?
Ubuntu, I think it follows. I don't know Mint. Brent used Mint. You may know more about it than I do. But I think the Mint kind of follows the long-term release of Ubuntu. There again,
that's the way I remember it, but I'm not sure.
I think that's what happened. So, I had been holding out on the long-term releases, but this time, and Bob Cannon, I know, is another Ubuntu user, and he's not with us today, but I had been holding out for, say, 5-6 months after the LTS, the long-term release, before installing the next one up. But I just don't see, with the way the updates can go now, I don't see any gain from waiting around. The gains that I perceived were back when, if you did something, you could break your installation or break break whatever some of the services you were using.
Yeah, the less updates.
No such thing. I did the rsync. I used rsync to back up my home directory, and that's it doesn't get emphasized enough, but it's such a wonderful thing. I think last meeting somebody was talking about getting something stuck in Windows and you can't get it out without doing a complete reinstallation of your Windows. I think it was a Microsoft account. I think Leander was talking about that or something. But it's such a wonderful thing in Linux to be able to back up that home directory, leave the rest of the operating system to go to hell, and then reinstall a brand new OS and be able to reinstall the home directory, and everything you've got pretty much works. So it's such a great feature, and I'm sure there are ways to do it in Windows, and I'm sure that Windows probably has overcome any of the old hazards that I used to run into when I tried to back up and restore Windows. But I just remember those days and how horrible it was to basically lose everything. because you didn't do something right, or because the OS doesn't like the programs that you were using anymore. They've phased out or whatever. It was such a hassle for me that it's one of the main reasons that I got off Windows to begin with, is because there was no portability that I could find that worked for me. So anyway, I'll get off the soapbox now and hand it over to somebody else.
Gene, let me ask you a question. What utility do you use to back up your home directory?
Do what, Alan? I didn't hear part of that.
What utility do you use? Use rsync or DD or what?
I did rsync, yeah, which I think is a front end for DD, isn't it?
I'm sure.
But it's very, very usable. I have used DD, but rsync has some switches where you can preserve links and preserve this, that, and the other. If you look on the wiki, it's all there, and it's a great program. And
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I think we lost Gene. Let's give him a second.
He'll come back.
Is on.
There he is.
I think I must have gone dark there. I apologize for that. I just got a blank screen.
That's weird, because
Yeah.
now you're on twice.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Well, let's kill the old me, and it'll go away, I guess. I don't know. They'll figure out.
I'll kick you out.
Kick
I
me
hope it
out.
won't kick you both out. Let's see what happens.
Well, if you want to kick me out, that's fine too. I was kicked out by Brent Knox. All right. Anyway, did you miss anything that I said, or was it worth anything? I don't know.
Well, how about using taring or just doing a compressed backup tar file and then
Oh yeah, I mean that is great, and would be fine. I don't have a problem with that. It's just I had been using Deja Dupe and Duplicity, which I really liked. It's a good program, but at the back of them all is probably either DD or rsync or something like that. So I figured, why not go back a step to the source, and gosh, going back to Unix days, tar and tar GZ and all that are certainly still around, still wonderful programs. Did I answer your question? I don't know.
yes, you did. Thank you.
Okay, good.
Okay. All right, moving on now. Pete?
As I said, I'm running Mint 20 something, and I've been looking into going up to the newest long-term release, but if I do download like 2022.04, whatever the latest is, I have to let it run overnight to do the download, and it may or may not complete successfully. So it's on
Pete,
my
that
list.
doesn't seem right. I mean, that's a long time to be. Are you on a slow connection or?
Well, 5 meg is considered pretty slow.
Okay.
Skyrunner, there's no cable, there's no.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I forgot you're out in
the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
So
I could burn a DVD and send it to you probably quicker than that.
Well, I'll keep that in mind. You know,
Go to a coffee shop, and if you have a laptop, and download it, on somebody's Wi-Fi network.
yeah, and that's probably the next step. I used
He's
to go
like
to-
Moses, though. He never leaves the mountaintop. He's
well, I used to go down to Panera Bread down by. It used to be called the Rush. I think it's called the Gold's Gym in South Asheville now.
yeah.
They had really good free Wi-Fi connection, and but I haven't been down there in quite a while. But that's probably the next step, is to go get a good connection and proceed that way. I've been spending a lot of time fiddling around with my new over-the-air TV connection thingamajigger, learning the ins and outs on that, and using my Unix or my Linux machine for just browsing the internet and looking stuff up online and stuff. I haven't really been, playing with a lot of ins and outs. Years ago, I bought a book, Linux passphrase book. I think it's getting old. I think there's probably a lot of new stuff out that's not in that book. I don't know if they update it or not. I guess I should check that out. I like working in the command line. Find that to be fulfilling for some reason, although there was something about people that use the command line are kind of like throwbacks to the ancient Vikings or something. I'm not
Yeah, they
sure.
call us graybeards, and I guess that's pretty apt for at least looking around the room here.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else exciting going on. Sun is finally coming out up here. That's good. Very quiet. There's been some kind of activity down in the valley. There's been a helicopter going up and down Route 70 or Route 40, like towards Black Mountain, and then coming back for the last few days. I don't know what that's all about. They fly lower than the mountain peaks on both sides of 40, so they're down below, which causes an interesting amplification of the rotor sound. Brings back memories of this book I read a number of years ago now called 1 Second After. I don't know if anybody's read that. It's about a nuclear device detonated 30,000 feet above the United States, and it knocks out all computerized stuff that's based on chips, on microchips or whatever they call them, cars and TVs and radios and everything, and how we kind of have to revert back to pre-chip days and what that causes. But it's an interesting read. It was written by a professor up at Montreat. I'm thinking maybe 10 years ago, maybe. I've got a copy in the bookshelf. Highly recommended. It takes place here in Asheville and Black Mountain and in the nooks and crannies and hollers. I enjoyed it quite a bit. That's about all I got, Brett.
Yeah, the wife has read that one. We like going to Phil's Barbecue over in Black Mountain.
Yeah.
And he's actually in the book. Like
Yeah.
that.
My dentist was in it also over in Black Mountain. His electronic drill stopped working, but he had an old pedal powered one that he could do. It was quite interesting.
Is on.
All right. Thanks, Pete. Larry, what you got going on?
His mic is muted. Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
I can hear you. We can see it too.
Well, I don't know which is better or worse. Maybe I should mute the camera. I don't really have a whole lot to say about Linux. Well, one thing, I tend to agree with you on the command line, because that's where I got going with Unix, and I think it has to do with being able to read and write and type. And that's what I learned how to do when I went to school, was learn how to read and write, and I learned how to type. And people don't seem to have those skills, or some people don't anymore. I think those are useful and important skills. So that's my little bit of my Unix comment, but since there's so few people, I'll continue with what Pete was saying about over-the-air TV. I don't use cable. Maybe I shouldn't say I don't use cable. I use Wi-Fi, and I'm sure those Wi-Fi connections are all hooked to cable. So, but I use a digital TV antenna also, and in Black Mountain, and I seem to have trouble with interference my neighbor, who seems to be a super paranoid person, put up these LED lights outside his house that he turned on all night long, and they killed my signal on that side of the house.
Oh my
I think
gosh.
it's mainly the power supplies, but it's not only that. Various LCD displays, like laptops, or just a monitor, LCD monitor, or even another TV, will mess the signal up. So it's nice. It would be nice if I was way up on Flat Top Mountain, or even Mount Mitchell, where you don't have neighbors and you don't have all this noise to pick up all the time. But so what I did last fall, actually it was before Thanksgiving, I got an antenna. I was using this old, 30 or 40-year-old antenna that was broken behind the house in the rhododendron, and we had an ice storm, and a heavy ice-covered limb fell on it and broke it into two pieces, and I wired it back together, and I was still using it. It has a preamp on it, and that thing is all beat up, and it was still working. It blew me away. I could get WLOS and really nothing else. But then when my neighbor turned on all these LED lights up there, it just killed the signal back on that side of the house. So I got this little flat panel, like 1 foot square digital antenna, and I put it out the front door of the house, and just hang it on like a ladder, and I'm picking up WLOS on that, which is what I usually watch. And actually, when I first did it, I actually got some PBS stations all the way from I think Waynesville, maybe I don't know whether it was Canton or Asheville, like channel 33, and another UHF station. Kind of blew me away. I don't routinely pick those up only occasionally, but I've noticed that some of the TVs I have, one of the TVs seems to have a lot better tuner and can pick up weaker signals better than some of the others. Some of them are, I look at these TVs that I'm working on as all being pretty cheap, and some of them are just, I would call super cheap, or extra cheap, or double cheap, or something. It's just cheap stuff. That's why I get them, because they don't last very long. People toss them out, and then I start checking them out.
Larry, your signal from PBS would be on Mount Pisgah, and so I guess you're aiming your antenna due west down the length of the Swannanoa Valley.
But I don't know whether or not WLOS is broadcast from Mount Pisgah too, and so that's maybe where I'm picking up WLOS is from their antenna on Mount Pisgah. But and then the other ones from Waynesville, I don't know exactly. Maybe they're all coming from Mount Pisgah too. I don't really know. WS supposedly has all these translators all over the place.
Right. There's one up on Flat Top, Larry. There's one on Flat Top Mountain for PBS.
But you don't have any trouble with any kind of interference on Flat Top Mountain?
No. I thought the days of interference from the LED bulbs were long gone, because when they first came out, that was a common complaint. And then they, I thought they had increased the requirements that they not emit, interfering radiation. But maybe he's using old bulbs or something.
My impression is they're cheap. The
Oh.
cheaper they are, the
noisier they are.
All the stuff you buy nowadays, every electronics appliance and cars and everything is cheaply made stuff. So that's just my impression. He won't listen to me and turn them off. He's got to have his lights, the whole place lit up all night long. So I like having the houses are close together. It's in a corner, and I like to have a lot of vegetation between the houses anyway. And my relatives came to town and chopped down a whole lot of vegetation. That kind of annoyed me too. But anyway, even on Mount Pisgah with what Alan is doing, broadcasting over like with Ubiquity radios, I guess those are, up there's probably a lot of not much noise, I would assume, if you're going over terrain where there's no houses. But we used to have trouble when I was working for Maine with 900 megahertz interference too, because a lot of devices use 900 megahertz. So anyway, that's my 2 cents worth on that topic for right now. Maybe I'll say a little bit more later if we still have more time, and it's really unrelated to computers, some other stuff. So I'll stop for right now and let Rusty or somebody else take over.
Larry, there may be some filters you can install that will block that noise coming from your neighbors' LEDs.
Yeah, one of the problems is that this antenna was really 30 or 40-year-old antenna, used twin lead too, which is very bad. Could be replace that twin lead with coax. Should cut down on the noise too, but that twin lead seems to pick up everything.
Yeah. I'm using a 30 or 40-year-old antenna, but I've got a little Ballon transformer that, it's on about a 4-inch long lead, connects right to the antenna and converts it over to coax. And that's what I run, for the majority of the run.
Well, that's what I have
cheap.
too. There's a preamp on the 30 or 40-year-old antenna. And then, you have to have power. It runs power over the twin lead. I was kind of amazed that I kept it working as long as I did. But for the one in front of the house, I also have a preamplifier that's close to the antenna. And I can't pick up any signal without that preamplifier plugged in. It's only 3 or 4 inches. It's a tiny little thing. And it runs off 5 volts. So I have a little 5-volt device here, or 5-volt plug, and I plug in to power it.
Right.
But those little 5-volt plugs you get that charge phones and things like that.
Right.
Those are very noisy devices too.
Are they really?
Yes, because I listen to FM and AM radio stations sometimes, and sometimes I just unplug the thing. I don't have the TV using the TV, so I can get AM and FM radio without massive noise in it. So a lot of power supplies converting AC to DC, like 5 volts or whatever voltage you want, tend to be very, very noisy.
Yeah, the switching power supplies. That's why I hang on to the big ones. They look like a brick, and they're They're just transformers. They're not
Right,
noisy.
right. That's when I studied electronics, that's what power supplies were. But now
Yes.
they put all this switching stuff in there that has all these oscillators in them. And
Yep.
then, so to make them as cheap as possible, with no grounding around it, they just
Yep.
blast everything.
Yep.
So that's just the world we live in now. Everything's got to be as cheap as possible. Seems like. Maybe I'm just negative.
Okay.
All right, Larry, thank you. Arnold has chimed in that he's still running Linux Mint. Looks like 20.3 with the Cinnamon desktop. I have to say that's a very good choice because that's precisely what I run. Again, we'll still have to do the GoFundMe for Arnold's microphone, but we'll see how that goes. How about Alan? What you got going on?
Well, I've been through hell the past week. I'm finally starting to see some daylight solving my problems. What happened was my production server runs Ubuntu 16.04 server edition, and it works great. However, it's reached end of life, and there's no longer release files available when you try to update it or upgrade it. And on top of the Ubuntu server, I'm running a control panel called Plesk, which I really like Plesk. It really makes things a lot easier to manage everything. But anyway, on top of that, I'm running Drupal, which is the content management system that runs my website. All of these applications have their own requirements. And for example, I can't upgrade Drupal because the PHP libraries that I have, even though I can install them in Plesk, the server will not install the latest versions of PHP. Bottom line is I need to upgrade, just completely change my operating system. So the problem has become I can re-image. You can't do a distribution upgrade or anything like that. It doesn't work. So what I have to do is, if I migrate it to a new server, I'm going to lose my IP address. And I've got lots of devices like web cameras and weather stations and all kinds of stuff that report to my static IP address. So that's not an option. I have to retain that IP address. So what they tell me I need to do is I can re-image my existing server, which will retain my current IP address, but it's going to wipe everything out. It'll just be I'll have a brand new, I'll upgrade to Ubuntu 20.04. I'm very concerned that I'm going to lose data. And so I needed an effective backup strategy. And I've tried, Plesk has built-in backups, which work well. I've restored from it. But if I wipe out my existing server, I'm going to lose that version of Plesk. So what I need to do is have off-site storage for my backups. And my host, which is ionos.com, used to be one-on-one, they sell a cloud backups product that it's run on a Kronos backup. Well, this thing is just so complicated, and it's got all these exceptions. I don't trust it because the exceptions can bite me when I do this. So I'm going to drop that. That's only $5 a month and no contract. And then I was going to go to cloud secure FTP service, but they want to lock you in for a 12-month contract on that, and I'm hesitant to do that. So I realized I have an Amazon Web Service account that with the Amazon S3 storage on it. And it's dirt cheap. They charge you according to how much data you're storing or input or output, the bandwidth going in and out. So anyway, I switched my my backup manager, to use the Amazon S3 storage, and it works.
Oh, wow.
So now I'm going through all these hoops here on preparing the server, just minimizing the disk space, before I do this backup and restore. But that's what I've been doing the last over a week, and it's been challenging to say the least.
You're learning a lot, though.
Yeah, the hard way. And I've discovered, even though Plesk is a graphical user interface, and I use that interface, it's oftentimes more powerful and effective to use their command line commands for backup, for restore, for just doing all kinds of things. So, but my service provider, there's so many different products between the operating system and Plesk and backup things and Drupal. It's very hard. They cannot understand the conflicts that each of these. It's not their fault, but it makes it challenging for me.
Alan, could you describe the size of your backups for the Drupal web content and the different, just the different applications that you're supporting for all of the equipment that's operating? What is the size of it, and why would you not also do a backup to a local partition that is simply attached to the server once the new server is up and running? Don't you do local backups as well as cloud backups?
Well, Rusty, it backs up, and this is not good practice. They recommend that you use off-site backup storage, because if you have a disk crash or something, it'll take out your OS plus your backups. So the recommended practice is to use off-site storage. I do backup. I will tar up on all my files and do other kind of backups, and then download them to my local computer here. But the file sizes are huge. Typically it's 34 or 36 gigabytes to download, and this takes hours, and it introduces the possibility of having corruption. Mm-hmm. I've done all that. Now, you asked about backing up my Drupal. Drupal, they have databases that contain all your, it contains everything. Mm-hmm. Those files are not that big. They're typically 2.6, 2.8 megabytes in size. So I make backup copies of my databases and download them locally. But the huge files, the data that's creating these, 34 gigabyte storage needs are my cameras. I've got 4 different webcams. One of them had 17 gigabytes of images on it, and so I've deleted it. I tarred it all up. I've archived it, and then I deleted most of those images because I really don't need to store that. There's a script that deletes them after 45 days, and we've got a little slideshow that you can see. But we don't need that many images. And also, I discovered that the cameras. I had the cameras were FTPing up still images in fairly high resolution mode. So each upload was 220, 230 megabyte files. Well, I've lowered the resolution. I've cut it in half, and I may cut it some more because the user that goes to the website, you can't tell the difference. So I'm trying to reduce all that down. But anyway, that's what I've been up to amongst other things. I'm happy that I remembered that I had this Amazon Web Services S3 service. It's a little complicated to set up your permissions and your keys to get into it, but it works great from both the command line or their graphical user interface when you go visit Amazon's the AWS online. It's great, and it's very inexpensive.
Hey, Arnold. I'm sorry, Alan.
Yeah.
There was just something on the internet. Some company just came out with a pure diamond crystal that's like a size of a quarter, and in conjunction with a quantum computer, you can store all data ever generated since the beginning of the internet on this little quarter-sized thingamajigger. How's that sound?
I like it.
How many $1 trillion though, Pete?
I don't know.
The other thing that happened, and then I'll shut up here, but the other thing that happened that kind of precipitated this whole thing of, upgrading my operating system and upgrading Drupal is I was watching my log files and I was running Wireshark, and I was seeing a lot of suspicious activity to IP addresses that have no business, downloading data or from my site. So at first I thought that I'd been hacked, and we may have been hacked, but now I'm beginning to think it's just door knocking. It's like web crawling robots that are hitting this thing, and they're not named robots. It's not like Google or some of the Chinese search engine. These are just IP addresses on cloud hosts. So I'm not quite sure what is going on, but anyway, I'm going to upgrade everything to the latest, and hopefully I will be secure. All right, Brent, I think that's it for me, unless anybody has any questions.
All right.
It's a shame that Dan wasn't here today, because I think he would chime in on the backup stuff. He's got a lot to say about that. You may get with him separately from the group, Alan.
Okay.
Yeah, it might be good to throw on the email thread and see how that goes. The groups. Rusty, what's going on? If you are talking, Rusty, you are muted. All right, I'm starting to think Rusty may have stepped away a moment.
Yes, I'm back.
Okay.
All right,
back.
there he is. All right, what you got going on, Rusty?
Okay, well, nothing much to say except the ongoing existential struggles of learning software. Nothing new on Linux. I've just
How
been
have
spending.
you managed to make it an existential threat or an existential struggle, Rusty?
Well, it's just everything is much slower. Doing trim carpentry has slowed down. Every bit of landscaping and outside maintenance is behind. I've reverted back to using SketchUp on some building designs, and I'm using that for my landscape model for some property. And I still will try Blender at some later time. When I get caught up, I would really like to move my skills to Blender. But SketchUp, it's got a good enough interface, and there are a number of interesting add-ons that are Ruby programs that are extensions. So it's a pretty rich collection of tools. And it's just amazing to think back to the days when I first got involved with CAD, and basically you just had a screen with a little menu on the side and a cursor, and just the simplest things. And of course, that was orthogonal drafting. It wasn't 3D at all. The original, and so that's just been so impressive to have that and word processing and spreadsheets. There's so many fundamental tools that we use without even stopping to think about it. And then there are all these other levels of how we like to have our world organized, the so-called personal information manager. I still haven't found the right tool. In that category, I would really like to get bookmarks out of the different browsers that become sort of locked collections that I never seem to merge my disparate bookmark collections that are in one browser or another that I was using at some point in time. And and that's a reflection that I haven't found the personal information manager for organizing both bookmarks and grabbed content and self-generated thoughts. These all really need to be in it basically needs to be a tree-assisted navigation system. Little collections of thoughts. It's mainly text, but sometimes you might want to, paste in links, and maybe at some point I would want to embed images in that. But I think it's just really a matter of managing text and links to content, like any other good library tool.
Have you ever exported the bookmarks into a JSON file or something like that to see if you can?
Well, I haven't, because I don't know what tool I would then use to visualize all of these JSON. Whatever you would call, if each bookmark is really a collection. It's a mini database that actually has some labeled fields, and then what we used to refer to as a free text section. You've got a title, you've got your URL, and then your notes in free text, and that's whatever.
I didn't know whether it would work or not, but if you thought of that, then.
Oh, well, I just don't know what tool. I mean, JSON is basically a way of passing bits of information, I guess, that is labeled. I guess JSON is similar to XML or any other any other kind of collection of data that has embedded labels that can be interpreted. To be honest, I can't say I know what JSON is, but an application.
I've heard of it.
Yeah, an application that would use JSON, I don't know what application to choose. So grabbing the data of my bookmarks in a JSON, what would you say, a JSON format or a JSON collection, I don't know what I would use to visualize it and certainly to present it as a tree. So that's an ongoing issue. And then, yeah, I am going to try to get involved more with QGIS, which is a geographic information system tool, and there's just some amazing things out there to visualize the earth that we hike in and travel across, so those are my current interests. They're just slowly making progress.
Rusty?
Yeah.
I use JSON. It's JavaScript object notation, and it does use XML and that format. And there's many free editors that are available. If you just Google JSON editors, and you can create or open JSON files. I had to get into this because the National Weather Service, their API uses JSON, and I needed some way to read those files. But anyway, it's a very common, and it's not that difficult once you get the file format. Once you understand and you can create your own file format. That's what's really cool. So you can create like labels, like text descriptors of your various fields, and then save objects, whether they're digital or text-based, in a JSON file, and then you can share those with other users.
Yeah, it comes down to the question of what's your final tool that's going to become a common denominator that is not going to be, that can be a destination for every bit of new data that, a home for everything that you merge or, that you bring into it. And then when you're in when you're using a browser for whatever purpose, because it, does better, it's a matter of, if you shift from one browser to another, how do you set an ongoing merge method?
Good question.
It's a problem when you go from one machine to another, but even on the same machine, I have a certain amount of preference for, sometimes I prefer one browser when I'm doing medical journals and another browser when I'm just on the regular internet. So I find myself, just not having the common denominator. And let's face it, I think that bookmark managers are fairly sparse.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not there are idiosyncratic ways that they manage the so-called tree of folders that represent those, and it's certainly not good for just general free-form notes. Yeah. So if I have the epiphany someday to know what that is, I'm certainly going to be posting it on the LUG site. So that's it for me.
All right. Thanks, Rusty. I think that just leaves me. So I keep saying this again and again, but sort of work keeps suppressing my Linux hobby. I have at work, I seem to keep downsizing my number of Linux servers, not necessarily for bad reasons, but there's been some consolidation and so forth. One thing I realize I need to do is share knowledge and find a person to back me up with like any Linux server administration that I do. So I need to find, you know, the best candidate, ideally someone who's on a team where that's an appropriate role. We have the issue at my work that we all kind of just tend to do what we tend to do, regardless of the role that we're in. So I'm a security guy, supposedly with a specialization in network security, but I find myself doing various things